Hello and welcome back to the Ninox Learning Channel. My name is Andy. I'm a Ninox programmer and trainer here at Nioxus Corporation. In this class, we're going to be looking at one of the new features that came out in the latest release of Ninox version 2.6. It's a new feature, a new parameter that they have added to the formula element in our databases, and it is really transformative. This is something that completely changes the way that we use Ninox and adds an entirely new dimension to the concept of relational databases. We're going to look at this new feature, the hotspot, in the context of a dashboard. We're going to be looking at our accounts receivable module in this class, and this is the first of many accounting modules that we're going to be releasing. We start with accounts receivable. This will be followed up with our accounts payable, inventory, purchasing, general ledger, and financial reporting. And each of these modules is available to you for download at no charge if you're a member at Nioxus. If you're not a member, you're going to want to be one. Go to www.nioxus.com and make sure to get your membership. These templates that you see us using in these Ninox learning classes will be available to you with sample data. You can use them as is. You can put them together to build your own Ninox-based accounting system, or you can enhance them to meet the specific and unique needs of your business. But for now, let's go ahead and get started and look at this great new feature that we now can use in our Ninox solutions. I'm going to start by introducing the feature itself, and we're going to do that on the sales dashboard. Now, the concept of a dashboard is that you should be able to go to one place and see all of the relevant information to help you understand how the system is performing. Now, we most often associate dashboards with motor vehicles, and they work the same way. You look at a single spot inside the vehicle, and it tells you how fast you're going, it tells you temperatures, it tells you how much fuel you have, it tells you how fast the engine is running, all the information you need to understand how the system, in this case the automobile, is performing. Dashboards in Ninox or any executive information management system, or EIS, are no different. They're a single point of reference that allow us to see how things are going. And these dashboards, these digital dashboards that we build in Ninox, allow us not only to see the information that they're presented, but there's information behind the scenes that we can drill down into, and that we can go from big picture to little granular details and back again. And that's a new term that we're going to be introducing in this class, the concept of drilling down or drilling through our data. But to get started, let's look at this sales dashboard. What it does is it starts on the left with the most granular, smallest unit of time measure, in this case, the month. And we have 12 months out of the year. Every 3 months combine to create a quarter, and we have 4 quarters of the year. Every 2 quarters combine to make up a half of the year. And when we combine the 2 halves of the year, we see the entire total annual sales. So going from left to right, we're moving from micro, a very detailed, granular look, to macro, seeing the whole picture, sales for the entire year. This is sometimes also referred to as a progression or a cascade or a waterfall, where small units of measure are combined to create larger units of measure. 3 months make up a quarter. 4 quarters make up a semi-annual period. 2 semi-annual periods make up the entirety of the year. As you look at this dashboard, one of the first things you are going to see is that the month formulas have a slightly different appearance than all of the other fields, the quarterly, semi-annual, and annual sales totals that we see on the screen. This is because they have a hidden power. They do something that none of the other fields can do. They allow us to drill through to go to an even deeper level of understanding, an even deeper, more granular level of detail. Now, before we drill through, let's understand the idea of drill up and drill down. If we are looking at great detail, 12 months of the year, we are deep into our sales analysis. We have drilled down deeply to get to monthly detail. If we go from this very granular detailed look through the quarters, through the semi-annual periods, all the way up to the year, we are drilling up from being deep down in the details to coming all the way up to the top where we see this one number, total annual sales. Drilling down is exactly the opposite. Here we are at the very top looking at all of our sales as a single number. As we drill down deeper and deeper and deeper through the semi-annual periods, through the quarterly periods, we arrive at this smallest unit of measure, the monthly periods. We drill down from the macro perspective of the entire year to the micro perspective of 12 individual months. Drilling down is going big picture to little. Drilling up, little picture to big, micro to macro. Drilling through allows us to see what is on the other side. And by that I mean, for example, we see that we had $106,044.04 of total sales in the month of May. These rolled into our second quarter total, which rolled into the first half total, which rolls into the year. But there's more detail behind the scenes. If I drill through this May number, I see all of my May details. And I see each of those details in a list presented alphabetically by customer name, showing me for each customer the number of transactions in that month and the total of those transactions. So here we see for the month of May, here is the $106,044.04. We already knew that was our total just by looking at this field here. But now we've drilled through to an even deeper level of detail to see that total broken down by customer. And if we want to see each customer individually, here we see a customer with $14,492 in sales in the month of May, spread out over 2 invoices. And if I want to drill down to those 2 invoices, I can open it up and see the 2 invoices. And if I want to go to the absolute bottom, the smallest, most micro, granular level of detail, I can click on an invoice and see that one transaction. We go from one transaction on May 22nd up to all the transactions for one customer in May. From there, we go up to all transactions for all customers in May. May rolls to the quarter, quarters roll into the semi-annual, semi-annual rolls to the year. This is a perfect example of drilling up, drilling down, and drilling through. But how did we drill through? This is what I like to refer to as a hot spot. And these fields, every one of them with the dark burgundy outline, is a hot spot. They have a slightly different appearance to indicate a slightly different set of capabilities. If I click on any of these other fields, nothing happens. But if I click on a hot spot, I see all of the transactions for that month. Now, what I'm going to do very quickly is ungroup so I can see all of the month's transactions. And I can now scroll through January, February, March, July, and September, 1 month at a time, seeing all of the detail. And if there's a particular invoice I want to get into, I select it and there it is. So how did we create the hotspot? Well, it was easy thanks to version 2.6 of the Ninox relational low-code database solution. I'm going to go into administrative mode and let's just look at the first month in the list, the month of January. This, of course, is a formula, and the formula is very simple. We define I as an array. This is a variable containing an array or a subselection of records in the invoices table. The subselection is specifically those records where the month of the invoice date is equal to 1. the number 1 month being January. So we are going in saying select all records in the invoices table where the month of the date of the invoice is month number 1, January. And in line 2, we use the sum function to summarize, to add up the values in every invoice total field for every record in the subselection or array stored in I. We repeat this function for every month. The formula for February, same function, just a different parameter. We want to sum up month number 2, all the way through down to December, where we are selecting a subset of invoices, the qualifications for being included in the subset, the month of the date of the invoice transaction is month number 12, December. We then take that whole bundle of invoices stored in the variable I, the variable created in line 1, and we sum up or add up the invoice total field for each one of those records. So that's how we got the number. But how did we get the hotspot? Let's go to more options to reveal this brand new field, this brand new parameter called on-click. And we see it right here. The on-click parameter allows us to assign not only a calculation to a formula, but an action to a formula. Formulas themselves have now become triggers. As we know from previous classes here on the Learning Channel, when you pull a trigger or you trip a trigger, something happens. Triggers can be things like we open up the database, we change the value in a field, or we add a new record to a table. Well, now we have a new trigger, and that trigger is clicking on a formula field that has an on-click set of instructions. The set of instructions are very, very simple. Change the value of the field selected month to a number. In this case, the number 1. If we click on the hotspot that is February, it changes the value in the numeric field selected month to 2. If we click on March, it goes to 3. September, it goes to 9. If we click on the hotspot that is November, selected month, this is a numeric field, is now equal to 11, because the numeric representation of November on a standard 12-month calendar, January through December calendar, November is month 11. So what is so important about this selected month field? The first thing is this. Let's look at the actions of the hotspot once more. This is all we see. The dashboard from granular monthly on the left to big picture macro annual on the right. We click on a hotspot to reveal a view, the detailed invoice ledger, but that view contains only the invoices for the month we clicked on. How does this work? Well, the first thing that we did is we made the visibility of the view dependent on this field selected month. If selected month is not null, is not blank, and this is the Ninox indicator for not. If the selected month field is not null or without any value, that means it does have some value. Now, I don't know if it's 1 or 2 or 8 or 10 or 12. I don't know what the value is, but if the month field is not blank, that means it contains a value. And when the selected month field contains a value, any value, this view of the detailed invoice ledger is visible. We display this if the selected month is not null. But what is it we are selecting? This is a view, which is one of our layout elements. You can go back, I think it was 4 or 5 classes ago on the Ninox Learning channel where we talked about embedding views. And we know that a view is a layout element that serves as a window on this screen into the contents of another table. We see here by looking at the highlight in our sidebar, we are currently looking at the sales dashboard table. This view is a window into the invoices table. And through that window, we want to see all invoices where the month of the invoice date is equal to the variable X capital MO. And we only need to look to the previous line of code to see what that variable is holding. It is holding the number that has been assigned to the field selected month. Let me reveal this field so you can see the whole thing in action. I'm going to go into Edit Fields, go all the way down to the bottom and go to Selected Month, which has currently been made invisible by putting the value null in the Display Field Only If field. I will remove that and go on to take the Selected Month field and move it all the way to the top, just like that. We see the selected month. Watch what happens, and I'll exit administrative mode, as I click on each hotspot. January means the selected month is 1. April is 4. February is 2. What would August be? Well, of course, that would be 8. For each hotspot, we have assigned an action, something that we want it to do when the trigger is pulled. The trigger is the act of clicking on the hotspot. And what the trigger does is changes the value of this one field, selected month. And it changes it to the numeric value that corresponds to the number of that month in a calendar year, where January is month 1 and December is month 12. So that was the first phase. Create the hotspots and then change this field here to let Ninox know the last hotspot that was clicked. I clicked January last. No, I clicked June last. I clicked September last. Whatever month or hotspot was clicked last is represented numerically in the selected month field. That was the first step, to know what hotspot we clicked on. Now we take the second step. And again, I'm going to ungroup the records displayed in this window, this view element that we've placed on screen. The formula behind the view element is very simple. Assess the numeric value in this field, selected month. This is the field that tells us which hotspot was clicked last. Store that numeric value in a variable that we have created and named X capital MO, the variable X of the month. Then in line 2, select all records in the invoices table where the month of the date of the invoice is equal to the number of the month that we just clicked. Now keep this code in mind while we go take a quick look at our invoices table. And here we see the month field. And the month field is equal to the month of the invoice date. We have used the month function to extract the number, which ranges from a low of 1, January, to a high of 12, December. And we are storing that numeric value in this formula in the data model of the invoices table. So every one of these records, and I'm going to open all of them up by getting rid of the grouping, Every single one of these records, as you see here, has a number in it. And the number, and it's in this field right here, the number is the numeric index or the numeric value that is equal to the month of the invoice date. Then in the dashboard, we do a comparison. Does the month of the invoice date equal the month that is the hotspot that was last clicked? If it does, go ahead and select that record and include it in the array. The selection of invoices that we want to analyze by summarizing all of the totals. So if we clicked on September, this field will contain the value 9, which means this variable will contain the value 9, which will enable line 2 to select all invoice records that have a field, the month field, that also contains the number 9. This tracking of what did we click and what does it mean? We clicked this hotspot. It means we want to see month 2 invoices. And again, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of the grouping. We clicked May. We want to see month 5 invoices. We clicked August. We want to see month 8 invoices. And when the month of the date, or more specifically, the number of the month of the invoice date that we see here, is equal to the number in this field, include it in this list. We then added a count to see how many transactions were in the list, and we added the sum total of the invoice amount column, thereby being able to tick and tie this $72,525.69 back to this $72,525.69. Here is the total for August. Here is the detail for August. Want to go to another month? Simply click on the hotspot, and there you go. This ability to make something happen, to trigger a series of steps or lines of code to be executed when the trigger is pulled, and in this case, the formula trigger is clicking the formula field. We now can make things happen just by clicking on the field. And there we go. Now, I promised you we were going to see a few other tips and tricks. Let me go ahead and share those with you right now. The first one I want to share requires me to exit the system entirely. So I'm now out of the system and back at my Ninox desktop. I'm now going to go back into the system, but watch what happens. I went straight to my sales dashboard because I have told Ninox this is the first thing I want to see whenever I come into the system. Before I do anything else, I want to see how my sales are progressing through the periods of the year on a monthly, quarterly, semi-annual, and annual basis. We are used to Ninox delivering us here when we enter a new database, to the Ninox desktop. But as you can see, and I'll do it again, when I open the accounts receivable module, it takes us straight to the dashboard. How did that happen? Very, very simple. I go back into administrative mode, back to my Ninox dashboard, and select the Options tab. And we look down towards the bottom to see that there is another trigger being pulled. This trigger is pulled when anybody enters this database. And what happens when we pull this trigger? What happens when a user enters the database? We are using the open table function. And if you're going to use this, remember, syntax counts. Lowercase o, uppercase t. The open table function takes two parameters. The name of the table in double quotation marks. A little bit different than what we're used to. a comma, and the second parameter, the name of the view in that table that we want to be presented, again, when this trigger is pulled. So let's step all the way out and look at it again. We have a trigger on open. After I open the database, I want you, Ninox, to open the sales dashboard table and present the contents in the invoice analysis view. Here is our sales dashboard table. This is the invoice analysis view. And to see it in action, we close the system, we come right back in. And by opening the system, we are pulling that trigger, and that trigger tells Ninox, open the table, open the view, and there it is. And from here, we can drill through using those hotspot triggers to our heart's content. Using the options, specifically the trigger after open option, is a way to fine-tune the user experience. If I want the user experience to begin with a look at how our sales are going, then I put that in as the trigger after open. And immediately, in that fractional nanogranular second, immediately after opening the database, the answer to my question sits before me. Here's how sales are going by month, by quarter, by semi-annual, and by year. Let's look at a few other things before we go. One in particular is, I don't know if you've noticed or not, but yes, I'm able to click on all of these hotspots, but I also was able to make the entire display go away. Now let's look at this again and see what I did. Remember, the ability to view this window into the invoices table is dependent on the field selected month not being empty. I don't care if it's a 1 for January, a 12 for December, or any whole number in between. As long as the selected month field is not empty or null, this detailed invoice ledger view will appear. Well, what that means is if the field is null, this detail invoice ledger will disappear. And I keep clicking on that spot right there between the monthly sales and the quarterly sales to make the view disappear. I click on a hotspot to make it appear, a different hotspot to change the content, and this seemingly empty space right there to make it disappear entirely. This is what we call an Easter egg. A little something we hid that is very valuable, but you have to know it's there if you want to use it. Let's take a look at the Easter egg. The Easter egg is itself a formula. The formula is nothing. 2 double quotation marks with nothing in between. I have gone into style this formula where the background color is white. This matches the background color of the entire screen. When I am out of administrative mode, as we know, this formula has no border style. It has no content, and it has apparently no color, because something white on top of a background of white will appear invisible, and it most certainly does, just like that. But this invisible Easter egg has a special power. This invisible Easter egg is a formula, and we now know that formulas can be clicked, and the clicking of a formula is a trigger. And when we pull the trigger, something happens. What happens when we pull the trigger on this formula field? The selected month is now made null. Doesn't matter if it had a 1, 2, 3 or an 8, 9, 10. January, February, March, October, November, December. It doesn't matter what number was there. When I click this empty, blank, invisible asset, this invisible formula, whatever was in the field is wiped out and replaced with nothing. It is now null. And when the selected month field is equal to null, we know that this view will not be displayed, because this formula, selected month not equal to null, will return a false reading. It is false to say that selected month is not null if I just clicked on this spot and made it null. So that's a little Easter egg that you can use to build into your databases when you want to hide something in plain sight. Click on a hotspot to open the detail and drill through. Click on the blank or the Easter egg, the invisible magic spot, to make the view go away. And while we're at it, let me show you one more tip. We are used to Ninox screens being gray. Let's create a new table. I'll call it table. I'll enter a single text field. I'll save my changes. I'll go look at the table, and I see a white field with a dark gray border on a light gray background. This is the standard look for Ninox. Well, when you want to do something that is not standard, when you want to change the background color, as I have done here, it's very simple. We know that we can add multiple tabs to the data model of a screen. And those tabs can be found here in the Add Layout Element selection of elements to place on the screen, to lay out in the objects that make up the data model of any table. Now, one of the interesting characteristics of a tab is that a tab will contain everything beneath it until it hits another tab. For example, I grab a tab and I put it right after the formula that contains the value March. And I'll name this New Tab in all caps and save my changes. Now, what happened to everything after March? Well, it's over here on the New Tab. The New Tab, however, is gray as opposed to white. Why is that? Because this gray is the default background color of Ninox. To change the default, we simply add a tab. While in administrative mode, we click on the tab and we change the color of the tab. And I will again select white. And now everything on this page, this tab, appears in white. Remember, a tab will contain everything beneath it in the data model until it sees another tab. Let's go back into administrative mode and look at the data model for the sales dashboard table. The very first thing we have is a tab. This tab is colorized white, and it contains everything we see here until we get to this point, because immediately after this point, we have another tab. And that tab contains everything underneath it. If I want everything to be back on one page, select the tab, delete the element, save the changes, and there you go. We're back. We have our white screen, which looks just like that, because we have this tab, the Invoice Analysis tab, being the very first object, in this case, a screen element, in the data model of the sales dashboard table. So there's a couple of tips and tricks to go along with this incredibly powerful new feature, the hotspot, or the formula trigger. Let's quickly review. We set up a trigger by going into administrative mode on the Options tab, and that trigger says whenever anybody opens the database, open the table named Sales Dashboard and present the contents in the view named Invoice Analysis. That got us to here. This screen appears in white because I went into the data model and made a tab element, which is part of the panel of layout elements. I made a tab the very first element in the data model, and I color-coded the tab white. Now, once we got to this screen, we were able to see this cascade from detailed micro to summary macro of all of our sales by month. We were able to do that by defining the month using the month function in the invoices table, so we would know for every invoice the number of the month of the invoice date. Back in our dashboard, we created an invisible field. It's at the very bottom. Well, we moved it to the top. It's called Selected Month. It's a number field. It has been nulled out for display. It is always invisible because as the human operator of the system, I will never put content into this field. Ninox will put content into that field by pulling the trigger on any one of the formulas that is the month sales total. And now, thanks to version 2.6, when we click on a formula, we can assign an action to be taken. The clicking of the formula is the pulling of the trigger. The action is change the numeric value in the field called, the invisible field called Selected Month. When that happens, two things take place. First of all, this detailed view, this view element, becomes visible because the condition for invisibility no longer exists. The condition for invisibility is that the selected month have no content. But clicking on a hotspot put in the content. So it is now going to be displayed. And what is going to be displayed is a selection or an array, a subset of invoice records. And the qualifications to be included in the subset is the month of the date of the invoice is equal to the number representing the month that is the hotspot that was most recently clicked. We then went on to add a few more fun things. Don't forget our Easter egg, this invisible space, this formula that contains nothing, that makes the value, the content of the selected month field null, which is exactly what it needs to be for the view to no longer be visible. Click the Easter egg, click the invisible function, and away she goes. We use tabs to colorize our screen, and then from there on out, it was simple math. The second quarter field, like all the quarter fields, has no click, there's no trigger, it just adds up the sum total of the 3 months that make up that quarter. October, November, December make up the fourth quarter, so the fourth quarter formula is October plus November plus December. Simple, basic stuff. The first half of the year is the first and second quarter, and the entire year is the first and second half added together. There you have it, folks. A simple, but I believe elegant dashboard that not only can be used for sales, it can be used for payroll, it can be used for purchasing, it can be used to track number of people showing up at events. Let's say you are in charge of a church group or any group that tracks membership and the attendance of members at monthly events. You track membership by counting how many people signed in each month. You then can click on a month to see the names of the people that attended that monthly meeting. Adding up the first 3 months of the year will give you total attendance for the first quarter. Adding up the first 2 quarters or the second 2 quarters will give you the first and second half attendance for the year. And adding up both halves will tell you how many people attended all of the monthly meetings for the year. You can use this to track the miles you've driven on a monthly basis. You can use this to track the points your team scored in every one of its games in every month of the season. And again, remember, this accounts receivable solution application is available for free download to anyone who has a paid membership at Nioxus. So if you don't have your membership, go get them right now. download the accounts receivable module, and stay tuned to the Ninox Learning channel because accounts payable, inventory, purchasing, and general ledger, chart of accounts, and financial reporting, along with your trial balance, those modules are coming up next. And if you're a member at Nioxus, you can download those modules for free, and pretty soon, you'll have your entire accounting system built and operating in the Ninox database solution. Thank you so much for joining us in this class. I hope you followed along, and I hope you find this helpful. Download the Accounts Receivable Solution application if you haven't done it already. Look behind the scenes at the code, and start building out your own accounting or any kind of tracking system in the amazing Ninox database. Thanks for joining us. I'll see you soon here on the Ninox Learning channel. Bye-bye, everybody.